Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for attending this very important Comic Book Chronicles press conference. I invite you to ask me any and all questions about anything. I will answer truthfully. I cannot guarantee, though, that the answers will be intelligent. Ritz from TikTok asks, favorite DC character? I kind of wish I wasn't wearing a Marvel shirt as I was answering this, but it's funny, I talk about some of what I'm about to say on an upcoming episode of the Metametheus Project, which I recorded this past week. Check that out. If you'd asked me this question less than 10 years ago, my answer would have been Nightwing, or maybe Batman. But then some things changed in my life, and my answer became Superman. Two things changed for me. The first, and I might lose some followers for this, but I don't care. Donald Trump became president and proceeded to fill Washington with a bunch of sycophants. And then in 2019, I had my first child, followed by my second child in 2021. Those events made me realize that the values that Superman stands for, honesty, integrity, kindness, courage, a sense of justice, those things are important in the world, and we need to, as a society, work on emphasizing their importance. For people who write off Superman because he's too powerful, I'm afraid you've kind of missed the point entirely. It's less about what Superman can do and more about what Superman stands for, and the fact that we have somebody that we can trust with that kind of power. That's more what Superman is about, at least for me. Pages and Panels on Instagram asks, digital or physical reader and why? In a perfect world, the answer would be 100% physical. But the practical answer is about 80% physical, 20% digital, give or take. Little peek behind the curtain here. I try and review minimum 6 to 7 standard comic books a week, and sometimes timeliness and speed become an issue. Like, for instance, with Ultimate Spider-Man #1 back in January, I wanted to get that book as soon as possible, and there's no comic book stores open at 5 a.m. when I wake up in the morning, so I just bought it digitally. But, true story, if I like something well enough digitally, I will usually go out and buy the physical copy too. I did that with Ultimate Spider-Man #1, and I also did it with Alan Scott, the Green Lantern. But I prefer physical comics to the point that when people are nice enough to ask me to review their comic book, I say I prefer to receive physical copies. I hope I'm not going to misquote him too badly here, but when I talked to Fabrice Sapolsky, the founder of Fair Square Comics for the YouTube channel, he talked to me about his philosophy that comic books are a multi-sensory medium. They're meant to be not just looked at, but held in your hand. And that's something that the more I think about, I really believe. So digital comic books are, I guess, a nice luxury, but at their core, comic books are a physical, page-turning medium, in my opinion. This is from Michaela Rose Price on Instagram. What sparked your love of comic books? Quick sidebar here. Michaela Rose Price, folks, is not only one of my favorite people in the world, but she's an actual journalist with CBS News, and she does some amazing work. So if you're not following her, you need to be. I assume she's asking me this question in a social capacity and not a professional one, though. It was the 1966 Batman TV show. I saw it in reruns when I was in early elementary school. And what's funny is that the show was almost 30 years old at that point, but I was still blown away by just the bright colors and the action and the dynamic acting style. Holy whatever, Batman! And, it was, especially in the 60s, it was very much a comic book come to life. And it's held up in the sense that it's a lot of fun to watch. But one day I was walking through a Jewel Osco grocery store in Orland Park, Illinois, with my mom, and I passed what they don't have in grocery stores anymore, which is a rack of comic books. They're missing that today, grocery stores are. But I saw my first issue of Batman there. It was Batman 482 by Doug Monk and Jim Aparo. And from there, I was just kind of hooked. I think I really got into comics initially because my favorite heroes and what today we would call IPs, intellectual properties, were there. Batman, the Ninja Turtles, sometimes the Ghostbusters and the Power Rangers were there, Star Wars, etc., etc. But as I grew older and more mature, I started to really appreciate the art form and what goes into making a good comic book. So here we are. Matt Hopf on Instagram wants to know, do you put on both socks before putting on shoes, or do you use the sock-shoe method? So if I understand the question correctly, Matt is asking, do I put on sock, sock, shoe, shoe, or do I do sock, shoe, sock, shoe? Folks, Matt Hopf has known me for about 20 years. We went to college together, and he was a groomsman at my wedding about 10 years ago. And yet, apparently, Matt has not figured out whether or not I'm a serial killer. Who else would do sock shoe besides a serial killer? A demented sociopathic murderer. It just, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. You know who did sock shoe? Jeffrey Dahmer. And then he'd take himself out to lunch. Friend of the show, Kathy Plays on Instagram, asks, fave Spider-Man movie? Now, everybody note what Kathy did there. Despite not being a comic book reader, she remembered to put the hyphen between Spider and Man, which is important because I think if you don't do that in the Marvel Universe, the name just becomes Spider-Man, which, you know, nothing wrong with that, just not nearly as imposing as Spider-Man. My favorite Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man 2, which came out in 2002, I believe. Although I think more accurately, it's the combination of the original Spider-Man movie and Spider-Man 2, both directed by Sam Raimi. I saw both movies in the theater, and what I remember the most about Spider-Man 2 is that at the end, I really, really, really wanted Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson to get together more than any other cinematic couple I'd ever seen. I was rooting so hard for the two of them. And that's, I think, one of the signs that you've got a great film, when you're really rooting for the protagonist and the love interest to get together. Incidentally, my third favorite Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. The most recent one, which has Alfred Molina reprising his role as Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2. So between Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home, I think the moral is, if you have Alfred Molina in your Spider-Man movie, you're gonna do well. Another friend of the show, Arthur Ebwin, who's another one of my previous interview victims, or interviewees, asks, pizza rolls or bagel bites? Neither, really. Neither have really grabbed me. But if I have to make a choice between the two, I'm going to say pizza rolls. I think when it comes to pizza and bagels, I'm a completionist. Just give me a pizza or give me a bagel. Don't give me a roll or a bite. Just give me the whole thing. I'm hungry. Comic Concierge on TikTok asks, favorite comic of the year thus far? Ooh, that's a hard one, but I do have an answer. I do, however, also have 9 runners-up for you to check out because, well, just because. Love Me, a romance story by, I have to look at the names on this one, Francesca Perillo and Stefano Cardicelli. Dear Editor by Ryan Lindsay and Sammy Cavella. The Deviant by James Tinian IV and Joshua Hickson. Dark Spaces Dungeon by Scott Snyder and Hayden Sherman. Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. The Batman First Night by Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins. The Punisher by David Pepose and Dave Wachter. Alan Scott The Green Lantern by Tim Sheridan and Cyan Tormey. Wonder Woman by Tom King and Daniel Sampere. But honestly, my favorite comic book to come out this year has been The Last Mermaid by Derek Kirk Kim. Some people are going to say that, well, he has an interview that comes out with him in the next couple of days. Of course he's going to say that. But the truth is, the reason I wanted to talk to Derek in the first place is because I thought The Last Mermaid was so good and so interesting. It's visually stunning. The story is very simple, yet very intriguing. And it's really a tremendous achievement in the world of comic books in 2024. And if you're not checking it out yet, you should be.